our next question comes from the North Coast Environmental Center. Very last.
Hi, everybody. Before I ask my question, I want to thank all of you, regardless of your motivations or your political persuasion, for stepping up. It's what makes democracy work, so thank all of you.
Thank you.
Currently, I'm the executive director of the North Coast Environmental Center. In 2008, I was on the city council, and I helped broker a deal between environmental groups and the city of Eureka to suspend using herbicides at the rate that they were doing at the time. The city agreed to make it the last resort, and since that time, it's been about a decade now, the city has lived up to that. But recently, the city biffed it out on the waterfront and neglected the invasive species and actually did the exact wrong thing with backhoes and heavy equipment and exacerbated the problem. Now the city's threatening to go back to using herbicides again as the first resort. So I wonder what your position is on that.
Jeanne?
So I'm proud that one of the reasons I moved here is I absolutely value our rich natural resources, our bay, our wildlife. I'm a photographer. I appreciate all our shorebirds. So I wouldn't generally support any kind of herbicide, especially next to our bay. But I would also like to be able to speak with the city, find out and get more information, find out what made the city come to this decision. I'd like to know what kind of herbicide they intend to use, why they decided to change their decision. I'd also want to know what the half-life of that herbicide is. So I would, I'm opposed to that, but I think that some of that had to do with, I shouldn't say what I suspect, but what I suspect is the police department went there and wanted to keep some of that ground covering at low to reduce transients living on the bay. But overall, I care about our environment and I want to protect it. I would need to know more information from the city to make a final conclusion on that.
Natalie?
Great, thank you. Well, I didn't know this was happening until I received this question. So it's a great opportunity for communication between the city and the NEC and other groups. I'd like to learn more about the specifics, but I generally don't support the application of herbicides, particularly adjacent to water sources. You know, our bay is important to fish and to oysters, and it's a big part of our economic livelihood as well as our strength economically and environmentally. I generally don't support those applications, but I will say if we're talking about highly invasive plant species that don't respond to any other form of treatment, like Japanese knotweed, which is one of the most invasive plants in the world, and it's only been proven to respond to glyphosate treatment. And I think the impacts of allowing it to go hog wild are more significant ecologically in some ways than isolated treatment. Then I would support the use of an herbicide in that kind of condition. So I'd really need to know more about the specifics. I do have a background for more than 13 years in stormwater management and water quality protection, so that's something I take really seriously. And in general, one of the key messages I want to get across is to reach out to the city, our staff, and council members when there are issues like this that arise. There's hundreds of possible issues that come up, and so many times we hear about them once it's sort of escalated to the point where there are fewer options for us, and there's not as much of an opportunity for communication. So I appreciate you bringing this forward, and that's the kind of thing that I think we want to continue to hear about and work on just as they come up. So thank you.
Larry, thank you for the question. I feel like if I was on city council, I could solve this with one phone call. Absolutely no toxins, nothing toxic near the bay. The bay is one of the best things Humboldt County has, one of the best things Eureka has. I cannot imagine me ever supporting toxic herbicides on the bay. I just don't see it. And there's a lot of other things I don't support by the bay either. We have to get control of our needle liver, we have to get control of the meth and heroin epidemic, and we have to reduce the number of criminal drug addicts so that we keep all kinds of toxins out of the bay.
Hailey?
Yeah, so I would have to say that I'm against the use of toxic chemicals like this in our environment. I would like for this to be banned and continuation, this could affect our food supply. The chemicals would get into our bay, affecting the fish and the other clams, oysters, things like that. The use of chemicals should not be taken, the use of toxic chemicals should not be taken lightly, and we should look into other ways to maintain the area around the bay first.
Leslie?
No, I do not support the use of herbicides along the bay. The only research I could find of potential threats was invasive cordgrass, which can be removed effectively with weed whacking and mowing, which was the policy that Eureka adopted. So I think it's a great opportunity to do that. It seems like since there was a 10-year period where herbicides were not used, we could use that information to continue another 10 years and another 10 years from there to find out what worked. You know, Humboldt Bay is one of the most pristine bays along California, and you know, things like herbicides could potentially threaten the aquaculture, such as the oyster farms. And I think, you know, removing plants and things with mechanical means could also be an opportunity for employment with such projects as Eureka's Uplift program or different things that seek to provide employment for people.
Carolyn?
This question is a little difficult for me to answer because I don't have a lot of information. There are a lot of herbicides that have come along that are not toxic, and nowhere in here does it say that it's going to be a toxic herbicide, but there are a lot of green herbicides to use, and it makes it really hard to say what side of the fence I'm on, depending on what it is that you're trying, what it is the city is trying to kill off, and what it is that they're using. So without a little bit more information, I can't be on either side of the fence. I'm right in the middle. I don't have enough information to give a valid argument one way or the other. It would all depend on the validity of the use of the herbicides. I'm an advocate for environmental responsibility until it affects the livelihoods of Ward 1 and Eureka City residents. So with that being said, I would just need more information to be able to have an honest opinion about this.
John?
Well, Larry, it's no secret that you and I have disagreed on occasion in the past. But when you did this 10 years ago, I supported you then, and I support you now. And the first I ever heard of them reconsidering this was this question from North Coast People's Alliance for this forum tonight, and I just got it Friday night. And that alarms me. Why isn't the public aware of what the city staff is thinking of doing? Now, one of my platforms in my campaign is we need more communication and openness between the city council, the city administration, and the public. Well, tonight I find out that the city council didn't know that this was going on. So maybe I should add another platform to my campaign that we need to have more communication between city staff and city council. So I'm alarmed to hear that they're even considering this.
Ward 5 candidates and the mayoral candidates. Larry Glass will ask both questions on behalf of the North Coast Environmental Center.
Good evening. Before I ask my question, like I did last night, I want to thank all of you for stepping up. No matter what your political persuasion or your motives, public service is one of the most important things we can do as a citizen. It's what makes democracy work, so thank you very much. Okay, first to the city council candidates. Right now, I'm the executive director of the North Coast Environmental Center. In 2008, I was on the city council, and I helped broker a deal between the city of Eureka and environmental groups to stop the city from routinely using herbicides throughout the city. The city's actually lived up to that now for a decade. But right now, city staff is planning to a project that would spray an invasive reed along the waterfront. And it'd be in violation of the agreement that we had that makes herbicide use the last resort. And they're doing that because they screwed up and they used mechanical means and then didn't bother to follow up with it, and it basically spread this reed further than it would have already. So what would you do as a city council person?
And we will go in the order of Joe and then Kim.
All right, I do not support herbicide spraying on the bay or anywhere. There are other ways of doing weed abatement. Of course, you can use your own hoe and whatnot and try to get them out. I am Italian. My grandfathers used to use vinegar on the weeds. That was how they got rid of the weeds. My grandmothers, they used to pour the boiling hot water from the pasta on the weeds. And this is really a good trick because it really gets down into the cracks, so especially the sidewalks. So if any of you guys want to try that, it does work. Finally, there's another way to do it that the old railroad guys will tell you. You just use burn them with a blowtorch. That pretty much takes care of those weeds if you just just burn them. So, and also I just want to let you know that since I am Italian, I brought some biscotti there. I baked some, so afterwards. That's all.
Kim?
I oppose using herbicides on the bay, in our town, at my house, everywhere. Unless it's like some really random, unusual, like crazy reason, which I can't imagine what that would be. As a mom, I'm super concerned about our environment and keeping it healthy for the future for my kids.